So, Kristen, you know the song by Adele. I won't sing it, but it's like, this is the end.
No.
Skyfall.
Yes, Skyfall. Yes.
Skyfall. This
James
is
Bond.
the end.
Yeah.
So, this is the end.
Ooh.
Am I coming on too strong?
A little.
I'm
My
coming on a
heart
little
just
too strong.
sunk. It's okay. Keep going. If whoever cries first loses.
Well, this is both a happy and a sad day because since I have known you, you have talked about how you loved working in the admin, you loved working for NASA, you loved being a political appointee, that was such a great experience for you, and that if given the opportunity, you would love to do that again. Well, now you've been given the opportunity.
Yes. Not at NASA.
Not at NASA.
Not at NASA. And that's exciting. I have been given the opportunity to serve. I know that sounds so cliche, and Tim makes fun of me all the time for saying I served. But I will be at the Department of Commerce working for the Bureau of Industry and Security, which is a crazy new challenge.
Yeah.
I'm reading press releases and all the X files and all of that just to keep up with it. And we're talking about tariffs and things that, I've definitely studied in the past, but it's just a huge new challenge and a huge new industry. And I'm so excited.
Wow.
But also a little terrified.
Yeah. Well, I mean, change is terrifying, right?
Yeah.
And new jobs. And it's something that obviously here at Problematic Women, you've spent the past 2.5-ish years, I think, helping us do, which is elevate women.
Yeah.
And elevate women into places of authority. And so we are heartbroken. When I learned the news, I had some very choice words.
Did I tell you? I don't even know if I told you.
No, you know who told me.
Yeah. So that was fun.
There's been a bit of a snitch around the office who can't keep any secrets, who Kristen happens to be quite close with, and she should never tell any secrets to, because
you're never off the record.
Then everyone's gonna find out. So that individual told me, and I was pretty devastated, because it has been just an absolute joy and pleasure to co-host Problematic Women with you, and we've had so much fun and made so many great memories and talked about so many different topics over the past 2.5 years. Gosh, it's been wild. And changed studios, gone from doing just audio to video, like so many changes. You've helped us to elevate our Instagram account. You have just given so much of your time freely to Problematic Women, because for those of you that don't know, Kristen's job, Problematic Women
is my job?
was nowhere in her job description at the Heritage Foundation, and yet she chose to give her time to this product because she believed in it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's huge. And I've been mentoring women my whole career too, because this isn't supposed to sound braggy or anything, but you start as a deputy press secretary at NASA, and people LinkedIn you and DM you on LinkedIn all the time. Yeah. And so I felt very lucky. And I don't think I've told my story of how I came to DC, but God definitely blessed that journey. It started with a tragedy in the family, and I was lost in college, and I didn't really know what to do. And then a NASA internship popped up, and last week we talked about, feminine rage and all these like nasty qualities that we're starting to see. And I feel blessed to have been surrounded by strong men that lifted me up. One, Jeff DeWitt, he's from Arizona. He gave me the opportunity as deputy press secretary after I worked in his office. And from there, we just kind of hit the ground running. I was put in positions where I was talking to foreign leadership. I was talking to some of the top scientists in our country and in other countries. We landed a rover on Mars, and we started the new Launch America initiative, the moon landing by 2024, which didn't happen because of the change in administrations. And actually, funny story, I didn't ever roll my TSP over because I was so confident.
What is a TSP?
It's our retirement plan for the government, because thrift savings plan, because I knew that Trump was going to win again, because God had put that in my heart, which I know maybe sounds crazy, whatever. No. Think what you want to. We are here now. I win. I'm just kidding. But while I was waiting for that, I had a hard time, because it's like you're up here and you get knocked down to reality. You're not invited to, launches anymore, and you're not doing the cool work of NASA. That was definitely a humbling reality check moment for me. And my family saw that for sure. And then I came to Heritage, and I had never heard of Heritage, believe it or not. And wow. I know it's kind of insane because it's everywhere. And while I was here, I was leaning into media. I was leaning into whatever I could. I was promoted. But then this opportunity came up, and I remember just loving it. I obviously am gifted at talking.
You are.
And I love the news. So I was like, this is such a cool mission. And I think that is what I would love to just like highlight in this moment. When you find what you're passionate about, make your role about it, even if it's in your volunteer capacity. I was very lucky to have leadership around me. Alexa Walker was amazing, and she allowed me to continue this after I left the media relations team for the outreach team. And I think, again, whenever I mentor someone, I say just lean into what you feel compelled to, what you feel called to, whether or not you're paid for it, because that's where God's calling you. And luckily, we were called back into the administration in kind of an economic business role. I was looking at a few different options. This one just happened to come to fruition first. And I was like, all right, God, let's go. Let's try this out. Yeah. So we'll see how it goes. But I don't know. That was a long-winded, non-really answer.
No, that's a great answer. Well, we really are excited for you, Kristen.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to crush it.
Thank you.
You're going to do amazing at the Department of Commerce and just bring, I think, that same spirit of excellence that you've had on this show. And as you've broken down so many different news stories and policy issues, and you're going to bring that into your new job. So we are obviously, I am very devastated. I know so many in our audience are just going to miss you and seeing your face on the show every week. But I'm personally really excited just to keep watching you flourish and use the gifts and the talents that God has given you. But before we let you go, do you have a favorite Problematic Women memory?
Ooh, favorite memory. You gave me a heads up on this, and I didn't really think about it. You
didn't do your homework.
No, I know. It's so bad. The first one that comes to mind is the Thanksgiving, because it was so different, and it was so fun. It was such a unique experience, and I would say it like really shows you what goes into production as well. Like, we do not give producers enough credit. She is one, but also probably the Iowa State Fair, because that was one of the first on the fly. Yes. We were in the back of a van.
That was so fun.
All while there were like thousands of people around us, tractor pulls going on that you could hear in the background. And you were doing other interviews, but
that was wild.
The places we've been, it's just been such a fun ride. And if I could just like for a second shout out to my parents, my sister, avid listeners, my friend Honore, and a few others, her mother Jean, who literally will listen to us and the Shapiro show.
I love it
exclusively.
I love.
So just like all those powerful women and guys, dads, brothers that have come around me, I really appreciate it. I would never have been here without them. And honestly, Virginia, you are the Problematic Women, and you just I can't wait to see you keep lifting women and empowering them and inspiring them for years and years to come.
Oh, well, Kristen, thank you. These are huge shoes to fill. We hope to have some news in the coming weeks about who will be attempting to fill some of those shoes that Kristen is leaving behind. Some very nice high stiletto heels. Kristen, thank you for just your service and your dedication.
Thanks for having
me. And until next time.
Until
not
goodbye.
Not the full-on Adele song.
No.
Not the total
Can't
end.
get rid of me yet.
So that's tragic, Elise.
I'm gonna miss her a lot.
We're gonna miss her a lot. I mean, she's not dead, but she's no longer with us.
I know she's gonna be working 2 miles away from us now. So far.
But she's not here in the studio every week, and that's heartbreaking.
But I'm so proud of her.
I know, it's incredible. Well, and as I said during her conversation, like, ever since I knew Kristen, she has been talking about wanting to work again for another conservative administration. So I'm really, really happy for her to see that dream come to fruition. And she is jumping into life at the Department of Commerce. So we recorded that about 2 weeks ago, but held it because she was like, I want to make the transition before it's official. And so anyway, tears.
Kristen, we love you. We miss you. We're so proud of you.
You better be watching.
I know, seriously.
Like, oh, man, what a loss. But if you are joining us here for the first time on Problematic Women, welcome to the show. We're so glad that you are here. We release every single Wednesday on YouTube and Rumble, so make sure that you are subscribed to the Daily Signal on both YouTube and Rumble. And then we release across all podcast platforms on Thursday, so thanks for joining us there. We do have some clips and things that we will be playing throughout, so we always say, hey, if you're listening on podcast platforms, we love it. And if you want to see us and grab a cup of tea and drink tea with us, as we do here every week, then join us on YouTube or Rumble. This week's show is a little bit unique because obviously we are saying our goodbyes to Kristen. We have a great interview that I recorded a few weeks ago, actually, with an awesome conservative influencer, Adrienne Gray. We chatted at CPAC, so we're going to get to that conversation later in the show. But in the meantime, Elise, there's a lot coming out of the White House constantly. We're all running.
Definitely.
Ever since Trump took office, it's just running.
You know, my mom, she texted me after the inauguration. She said, "Are you excited to finally breathe?" Because I remember my first or second week on this job was the Biden and Trump debate.
Oh, wow.
And ever since then, it was just running.
Yep.
And I was like, I am looking forward to being able to breathe for a second.
Joke's on you.
That was on a Sunday, I think, or Monday, Tuesday, whichever day. I called her back the next day. I said, you might not see me for the next 4 years.
Literally, though.
It's very exciting. It's very exciting stuff to watch.
Yeah. Well, some of the biggest news over the past week has been, of course, we have continued conversations happening around the whole Signal chat and what happened with that. That's a wild story. If you're not following that, it's wild. Check it out. But the biggest news as far as like structural change within our government, within our federal government, is that Trump signed an executive order last Thursday to move towards dismantling the Department of Education. And this is something we've talked about on this show before, Elise. It's something that the conservative movement all the way back, really, for years, I think even before Ronald Reagan, but Ronald Reagan talked about, hey, why do we even have this Department of Education? Because education is such a local issue and should be handled by state governments, by local governments. Why are we at the federal level having levers that pull things around education? It doesn't make sense. So long time coming.
Definitely a long time coming. And it's really interesting. I didn't know that President Ronald Reagan also questioned, why do we even have this? Because he was president very close to the conception of the Department of Education, just like 10 or so years after?
Yeah, or less, yeah.
So the fact that he was questioning whether or not it's really effective, even only 10 years out, is crazy. And then everyone just kind of forgot about it, I guess. And now people are upset because they're like, it's the Department of Education. It's like
what about the children?
Exactly. And I'm like, well, it's only been around for 40-ish years.
Well, and so little of what they do actually affects kids. The vast majority, one of their biggest roles is handling everything with student loans. Hate student loans. Horrible.
Forbidden word.
Don't ever get
bleep it out.
Loans. Literally, might have to bleep that out. But the Small Business Association is just going to take over handling student loans, and along with their programs related to food programs in schools, like all of that is just being shifted to other areas of the government. And when it comes to actual funding that goes towards education, that goes towards elementary and secondary education, only across the United States, I think it's about 8% of public education funding, about 8% comes from the federal government. Not even necessarily just the Department of Education, but various departments within the government. So it's a very, very small piece of the pie, and the piece of the pie that the Department of Education has can easily be farmed out to other departments.
And also it can be farmed out to the 50 departments of educations that are run by individual states.
Exactly.
It's really interesting that you brought up that a lot of what goes on doesn't really affect the kids. What about the kids? But what does affect the kids is their standards of education and the quality. I grew up, K through 12 and then college, went to a public university, went to public school. So I felt firsthand the effects of that. And you don't really think too hard about my education quality isn't that good. But I do remember in high school starting to feel some of these more DEI initiatives being infiltrated
even when
into
you
my
were in
education.
high school.
Yes. I think right when I graduated, it was...
What year did you graduate?
I graduated in 2020.
Okay.
Technically graduated in 2020. So an online school.
Rough time to be in high school.
But right after, I noticed that when I went back to visit to do some panel for my English class from senior year, the curriculum I heard from my teacher is a lot easier, and the things that they were being taught were a little bit more ingrained with DEI. I actually remember in one of my Spanish classes, we had to watch a video or a movie in Spanish, and it was about this mom trying to reconnect with her daughter, and they're being pulled apart by ICE because they immigrated illegally, and we felt really bad for them in high school. But then I was like, this doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
So
fascinating.
that's what the Department of Education and these woke bureaucrats are pumping into education. That's what they're doing for the kids, really.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And that is why Trump has signed this EO. Let's go ahead and roll this clip of what Trump had to say about the Department of Education and this action that he is taking.
Today we take a very historic action that was 45 years in the making. In a few moments, I will sign an executive order to begin eliminating the Federal Department of Education once and for all. And it sounds strange, doesn't it? Department of Education, we're going to eliminate it. And everybody knows it's right. And the Democrats know it's right, and I hope they're going to be voting for it because ultimately it may come before them. But everybody knows it's right, and we have to get our children educated. We're not doing well with the world of education in this country, and we haven't for a long time.
That I also just so appreciate how with so many of these executive orders that Trump signs, just the marketing aesthetic is so on point. Like all the kids sitting there at their desk, like brilliant, is so brilliant.
I love a prop.
Oh yeah.
I love a prop.
Everyone loves a good prop. Like brilliant. But just like the president said, he's like, strange, Department of Education. It has to go back to that local level because we have, as the president said, been struggling for so long on that issue of education. I mean, it was a few weeks ago, months ago, maybe like 6 weeks ago, we talked about the latest report card, national report card, and how reading levels, math levels are so down across the country. And it's gotten really discouraging because folks kind of thought there was a lot of grace, right? After COVID, it was like, okay, you know, our math levels are down, our reading levels are down. That's understandable. COVID messed a lot of kids up. But now testing like the third graders is like they were little, they weren't affected by COVID. Like they have been in school properly all the way through. But I think what happened is during COVID, literally the standard of education, it was lowered and it hasn't been raised back. Like it stayed just almost that issue of, you know, the problem of having low expectations.
Exactly.
Like as a country, we've lowered our expectations around education and they've just stayed low.
I found a really interesting statistic when I was doing some research about this when he signed that. Apparently in 2023, not one single Baltimore high schooler tested proficient in math. And math scores have been the lowest they've been in decades for 13-year-olds.
Wow.
So those only have to do with math, but I mean, everyone
learns
math.
It's very foundational.
It is.
Well, and it's not only foundational for knowing math, but it's foundational for brain development and problem solving and confidence.
Memorization, patterns,
everything.
So that was alarming.
Baltimore has long been a Democrat-run city and continues to be. Wow. Discouraging.
It's discouraging. And even, you know, the 50 states have their Department of Education. So what's going to happen in these states that aren't Florida or Texas or particularly conservative Republican run states?
My theory, I might be wrong, but as I consider myself an optimist. You have to be, right? You have to be. I think that this, without the Department of Education, without maybe a little bit of an excuse from states of like, well, like we're trying our best, but it's kind of the federal job. Without that excuse, I actually think it really will be the pressure that some of these states need to say, okay, we have to take full ownership. No one's coming to save us. Yeah. It's just us. We have to get our act together and we have to raise the standards in our state so that our kids are proficient in the basics of math and reading and history that's not woke.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I completely agree. And to also bring in a little bit more of a pessimistic outlook.
Oh, please.
So they can get reelected.
Yeah, no, that's actually true too.
Because parents aren't going to reelect someone
Yeah.
who let their children fall through the cracks and made their life difficult for the rest of their life.
Well, and we think back to what happened in Virginia with Governor Glenn Youngkin's election. He won that election on education. And it was that parental frustration over the DEI initiatives, over the transgender initiatives that were being pushed in our schools. And so you're right, education is something that really crosses those political boundaries, because at the end of the day, doesn't matter how you vote, everyone cares about their kids.
Exactly.
I want the best for my children.
I'm curious what you think. Do you think that this will pass in Congress? Because Trump said, I really hope the Democrats vote for this. I think they should vote for this, but this is a very divisive issue. So
I will be shocked if a single Democrat votes for this. And I'll tell you why. Because at the end of the day, the left is about expansion of government. They want bigger government. They want more power. That's who they are.
Yeah.
So I'll be very surprised if any of them get on board. My hope is that every single conservative in Congress will get on board as they should. This is what their voters want. They want to see the federal government shrink. They want that power returned locally to the people. I mean, every Democrat should also vote for this. Like, this is a win for the whole country. So I think it will ultimately pass, but it might be a fight.
yeah, definitely.
What do you think?
I agree. Couldn't have put it better myself. I'm just going to sit on the sidelines and see what happens.
Eat the popcorn and we're going to find out.
Seriously.
Well, speaking of Trump's actions and taking executive action, the president on Tuesday was speaking with press, and he said that he is considering taking steps to freeze federal funding to Planned Parenthood. This is huge. And I did a little digging, and it's actually wild how much money the federal government gives Planned Parenthood in grants and so forth. So different estimates depending upon who you ask, but it's likely around 150 million that the federal government that is filtered in to Planned Parenthood. And Planned Parenthood, just to be clear, so Planned Parenthood in their 2022-2023 annual report, they reported nearly 2.1 billion in income. This is according to the Charlotte Loescher Institute. Nearly 2.1 billion in income and over 2.5 billion in assets. So let's just be clear. Planned Parenthood is a business. They do not need funding from the federal government. And I don't, frankly, want my tax dollars going towards that. But let's go ahead and roll this clip from the president and see what he had to say, because this was an interesting question. He was asked about it, and he was also further asked about a possible investigation of Planned Parenthood. So this is fascinating.
If Planned Parenthood is defunded, would you look into the harvesting of baby organs that they've done throughout the years and maybe go after some criminal prosecution on that?
Well, I think you're talking about a subject that is a heated subject, and we'll look into it. We're going to look into everything, but that's certainly a subject that's been debated for a long time, and we will look into it, yeah.
We will look into it. Like, let's go. I mean, this is another thing that's a long time coming.
Definitely. It was a huge, huge deal when the political prisoners imprisoned for the FACE Act were freed. And this is just the logical next step.
It is.
It's like, what were they fighting against? What were they imprisoned for? Maybe let's investigate it now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and there's been so much over the years that fantastic journalists have done in uncovering the ways that Planned Parenthood has used and been a part of the sale of fetal tissue. And I mean, putting it plainly, like, of babies, like of little babies. And so there absolutely should be an investigation to know why on earth were they ever allowed to do that? How much money were they making off of that? The public deserves to know, because again, Planned Parenthood is a business. It's a business that has profited off of a lie, off of a political agenda. And we have seen a lot of unraveling of Planned Parenthood over the past decade, and certainly since Roe v. Wade was overturned. But this is an issue that, again, I think so many Americans really deserve to know the truth around and want to know the truth around.
The first time this was really put in context as Planned Parenthood as a business for me was, I want to say, in the past year or year and a half, I remember watching journalist David Daleidon's undercover videos when he went to a Planned Parenthood convention of sorts. I really don't know what the context was, but he was posing as I don't even remember what.
I think he was sort of posing as like a fact finder kind of pseudo journalist, but he got their walls down.
Yes,
over glasses of wine and such.
He was chatting with them, with other people who worked at Planned Parenthood, and they were like, "Oh yeah, like if you can keep the leg intact or the hands with all the fingers, it's gonna make you a lot of money." And the way that they were just so casual about it, chatting about it, laughing about it almost, it wasn't as easy as before when I just thought, oh, these people are evil who support the abortion industry. But I was like, oh, these people genuinely believe that this is just a business and this is advancing science and it's okay because these aren't real humans yet. And it was even scarier seeing that and just seeing how it's just such a divide. It's not an active choice to think that it's evil. It's, well, we both think we're doing something good. So
like
it was scary.
Pulling back of the curtain of what Planned Parenthood really is.
And that's why this potential investigation is so important, and it's going to be so explosive if it does happen.
Oh my gosh, it's going to
be. My goodness.
Yeah. We deserve to know. Well, if you want more of this kind of breakdown of the news, what's happening every day, then you need to check out the Daily Signal podcast because we put out 2 episodes every single day. We have an awesome contributor here at the Daily Signal named Victor Davis Hanson. If you're not familiar with him, get familiar. He has just the best analysis on the news and what's happening in our world. So we release his shows on the Daily Signal podcast, his breakdown, his analysis every weekday afternoon. And then in the mornings, you can get a rundown of the news in 10 minutes with Top News in 10. I previously hosted that show. Now, our colleague Tony Kennett is hosting and just crushing it. He's doing it on video now. It's like, he's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant. He just runs through the news. I love it. It's a great way to kick off your morning. It's fun, it's entertaining, and it's super informative. So if you want more news than just once a week here on Problematic Women, then go ahead, pull out your phone and subscribe to the Daily Signal podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, or you can also catch all of those shows on YouTube, on the Daily Signal YouTube channel. But lightening things up a little bit here, Elise. One of our stories on the Daily Signal that exploded this past week was our good friend Tim Young's breakdown of the movie Snow White. And you also have had some great commentary on this movie. So it just released last weekend. And I would say from the time this movie was announced, it has been controversial.
It has been controversial ever since 2022. I remember very distinctly the moment I opened up Twitter and I saw that actress Rachel Zegler was cast as Snow White. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. I personally used to be a huge fan of Miss Zegler. I still think she's very talented, but man, sometimes you just want people to shut their mouth. Oh my goodness.
Oh no.
But it was controversial in 2022 when she was announced because if you don't know, she is a Latina actress. She played Maria in West Side Story. And the fact that she was cast as Snow White kind of didn't make sense because Snow White, you know, skin as fair as snow.
Very pale woman.
Yes, very pale woman. It's in her name. It's literally her name.
Yeah.
But it was 2022. So that's what the name of the game was. It was Biden's America.
Yep.
It was Disney DEI all the way.
Yep.
So I was like, you know what? Whatever. I wasn't going to watch it anyway. But Disney and Rachel Zegler really made it hard to ignore this movie because she just kept going on press tours about how she's not going to be saved by the prince and I have a romantic lead in this movie, but maybe his scenes will get cut. Who knows? And she's going to be dreaming of the leader she can be. And I was just, like most of America is now, there's been a vibe shift to be so sick of this girl boss performative feminism, quite frankly, because Snow White is one of the only princesses whose strength was kind of in being a homemaker and kind of traditional, and she was my favorite growing up.
Oh,
very,
I love it.
Very.
You guys have the same hair color.
Thank you. But not the same skin color, and that's why I'm not Snow White, or so I thought.
But now you are.
Now it could be. So Disney, give me a call.
There you go.
But it's been controversial. But aside from Rachel Zegler being super performative feminism, and Disney in general, not just her, she also in general she's Gen Z, very young Gen Z, very vocal against conservative values, which shuts out half of the audience for this movie.
Half of America.
Which is crazy. Yeah. She called for not violence. She said, I hope Trump supporters never know peace and Trump. So I'll remember that. And she wasn't the only controversy about this movie, because actor Peter Dinklage from Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
He was the voice of the goat in Wicked. That's what I know him from.
Very important roles.
He is a little person, and he was criticizing Disney for potentially using little people to play the 7 dwarves. Interesting. But he's had the privilege of having a lot of success in Hollywood as a little person, where a lot of people haven't. Yeah. So that did not go over well when he said that, because first off, Disney opted to use just a band of quirky, oddball-looking characters instead of dwarves for the 7 dwarves. And the little community apparently was really not happy about this. I did a video on this recently, and there is a famous actor who was caught by TMZ saying, hey, I don't like this. This is putting people like me, who this is their only chance to have a big breakout, like forefront role, out of work. Yeah. So they were not happy about this. And if it seems like I've been talking about the controversies around this for so long, I haven't even touched what happened in the movie yet.
Well, and I think that's where it's a combination, right, of like this pushing of wokeness, but then because there was pushback where Disney was like, all right, we're doing this band of misfits to be the 7 dwarves, and then everyone's like, what are you doing first off as far as not giving actors opportunity? And that's not the story.
It's just not the story.
It's not the story that we all grew up with, that we love. It's not like you're making something new. You're trying to improve upon it and make more, bring to life in a new way a very old story that we all know and love.
And if they wanted to make this a complete rewrite of the movie, they should have advertised it as such. But it really was not at the forefront of any of their advertising that this is a new and revamped Snow White, except for when Rachel Zegler was just going off and calling it weird, the original story, and that she hasn't seen it since she was 2 years old. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's
that's something to brag about.
It really isn't. And I have not seen the movie. So you know what? Maybe I'm going to regret everything I'm saying right now and watch it and think it was the best thing ever. But after reading Tim Young's review, it just sounds like Disney didn't know what they wanted from this movie. There was a lot of pushback, and they actually responded to the pushback. So they had to reshoot a bunch, apparently. Yeah. It looked very messy. It was not the story that we love. And I just think that we're in a new era of culture where there you can see the nuances in the original movie. Like, okay, sure, she cooked and cleaned for the dwarves, but she also escaped her evil mother who was trying to kill her.
And the dwarves were her support network.
They were
her friends that I think gave her the strength to be able to go and defeat the evil queen.
Exactly.
You know, we all need those people. And it was interesting and sad to see ultimately that they settled on using like CGI to create the dwarves. And it's a very weird mixed medium where you have Snow White, a real person, with these dwarves that are very obviously not real.
Yes. I mean, and it puts 2 groups of people out of work. It puts the NYU drama students that they hired out of work and the little people who never even had a shot at the one role that it's like a no-brainer that we would cast people who have dwarfism. So
well, and the world responded and was displeased. So opening weekend, they were hoping, reportedly, the crew and studio and all of that, they were hoping to bring in about 100 million the first weekend. They fell short of that. Globally, as of Sunday, 87.3 million international to domestic opening weekend. Rotten Tomatoes. Whew, this is rough. Okay, I trust Rotten Tomatoes a lot. I feel like they're usually pretty accurate. So critics, 42% on Rotten Tomatoes. The critics went after.
And the critics are usually the most woke of the wokest of them all, as the Magic Mirror might say. Our Daily Signal Magic Mirror would say that.
Daily Signal Magic Mirror would say that. But I think it was all those shifts because people were so unhappy with, okay, we're going to change this, we're going to change this, we're going to change this because of the left agenda, that it just created a really kind of disconnected patchwork style of movie. Tim Young breaks this down so well. We'll link that article in the show notes because it's just great. Now, it did do better with audiences. It got 74% on Rotten Tomatoes from audiences. Okay. So fair. But it was really fascinating to compare with some. We both geeked out yesterday about Cinderella, the 2015 Cinderella movie with Lily James. Y'all, one of the best movies of all time. If you haven't seen it, do yourself a favor. Go watch that.
Go watch it. It's not a musical, and it still did better.
So good. It's just so good.
That dress alone gets 100% on Rotten Tomatoes for me.
I have gone down some rabbit holes of the behind the scenes stuff on that Cinderella movie and how hard it was to dance in that dress. Oh my word.
I think you can go to a museum and see the dress.
Really? Okay, well, at least we should go. Problematic Women field trip. We're going to see the Cinderella dress. But by comparison, opening weekend worldwide, Cinderella in 2015 earned $132.5 million. So almost like 150 million more than Snow White earned opening weekend. And on Rotten Tomatoes, it got 84% from critics and 78% from audience. And so then I was like, okay, I wonder about some other Disney movies. Beauty and the Beast, 2017. This was wild. 350 million globally opening weekend. Huge opening weekend for Beauty and the Beast. On Rotten Tomatoes, 71% from critics, 80% from audiences. So this is an interesting compare and contrast. I mean, why do you think you have movies like Beauty and the Beast, Cinderella? You kind of think Snow White would follow the trend, right? I mean, these movies popped off in box offices huge, and then we see Snow White not even making that baseline goal they wanted to make of 100 million opening weekend.
I think it's two things. First off, I just don't think that they changed any of the original story that much for the movies that you mentioned, Beauty and the Beast and Cinderella. I remember there was a little bit of controversy surrounding Beauty and the Beast because they're like, LeFou might be gay. And I'm like, okay, sure, whatever. He can be, whatever. But they didn't desecrate
They didn't harp on that.
the integrity of the movie and why people would go see it. But Snow White, they changed a lot of that. And then also, I just think, like I said, 3 years of messy, bad press. The only reason someone who isn't a huge Disney live action fan, which I don't know if those exist. The only reason that they would go see it is to, bring their kids who really want to see it, or I just want to bear witness to the final product of 3 years of mess.
3 years of mess. Well, and we have to be honest about Disney princess movies. What do we all want? We want to see the love. We want to see we want to see Prince Charming and Cinderella fall in love. We want to see Belle and the Beast fall in love. Like, this is essentially the climax of the story. It's a romance, and as little girls, we all grew up dreaming of our Prince Charmings. And so then you have an actress in Snow White being like, it's not about the love story, it's about empowerment. We have plenty of movies about female empowerment, about female superheroes and strong women. That's great. You
can go watch those movies.
You can go watch those movies. For Snow White, for Cinderella, for Beauty and the Beast, give us the love story.
Exactly.
Give us the creature singing in the forest.
I think this would also make Walt Disney very sad because it's not like these characters were not strong women in the first place.
Yes.
Maybe not to modern day super like rah-rah feminism standards, but Belle, she read and she survived in a castle, and circumstances threw these princesses around and they didn't really have agency around their situations, but it was the way that they responded to their situations that really taught them resilience and beauty and strength. And I think that is more empowering than someone being like, well, I don't want a boyfriend because I have to lead my country
Yeah.
and talk to some CGI dwarfs.
Not cool.
Okay.
Not cool, Snow White.
Not cool.
I have to, because as we're talking, I'm thinking about Jordan Peterson, and anytime I have the chance to talk about Jordan Peterson, I will. So I have to give him a quick shout out. If you haven't seen his analysis of Beauty and the Beast, it's fantastic, but he talks about this really classic, in some ways, tension between men and women, that for men, there is kind of this beast mentality that in a way is healthy. It's their strength. And as women, we have the opportunity in a way to tame that very wild element of a man, that beast side. So anyway, I just love his breakdown of that. So I gotta spend a weekend watching Disney movies now.
Seriously. And one more thing I want to mention, I did think about this just now, but there was another live action recently that sort of got DEI washed. It was The Little Mermaid.
Yes.
However, I don't know the statistics on it, so I really don't know if it flopped as much as Snow White. I don't think it would because I haven't heard of it.
Yeah.
But I mean,
that one I think did quite well.
And
I didn't pull the numbers, but I think it did pretty well.
It's because they didn't change the story.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, it really doesn't matter that much if Ariel is white, black, Asian, whatever.
Yeah.
So
What are mermaids? We don't know.
So it's not a race thing. It's really, I mean, it just didn't make sense. But it's not a race thing. Let's be honest.
Yeah. Well, I mean, mermaids are magical creatures.
Yeah, they're not.
So hopefully we're not ruining. It's FYI, mermaids aren't real. We won't talk about Santa, but mermaids aren't real.
What I'm hearing is maybe you could audition for the next live action Mulan.
Oh wow, yeah. me and my little British heritage.
Yes.
Oh, that was we've talked about that on the show. What a disaster Mulan was. That was a sad Disney remake. That's one that goes in the category with Snow White of flopping.
Yes.
But if you watch it, let us know. We'd love to hear what y'all think about the live action Snow White. Sound off. Send us your comments. Maybe you strongly disagree. Maybe you loved it. Maybe you thought it was great and the best Disney movie ever made. We want to know.
I'd love to be convinced to watch this. Try
and convince us.
I love to hate, but at the end of the day, I also love to love. So if it's a good movie, I don't know. Sorry, Rachel Zegler.
Yeah, I mean, good movies are just, good movies. So Disney, do better. All right, well, without further ado, I would love, speaking of pop culture, we love talking about that on this show. But if you want more pop culture from a conservative perspective, I had a great conversation with Adrienne Gray. She is really tackling this space as a conservative woman. I spoke with her at the Conservative Political Action Conference a few weeks ago. And we just spoke about the fact that conservatives for so long kind of ignored that pop cultural space. And it was like, all right, we're going to do kind of the more intellectual route. But that really, really harmed the conservative movement for so long. And really just in the past decade, I think conservatives have recognized that and been engaging in that space really beautifully. And so that is exactly what she is doing. So without further ado, let's go ahead and pop over to that interview with Ms. Adrienne Gray. Well, I'm so excited to be sitting here at CPAC with Adrienne Gray. She's a pop culture expert. She's a voice for Parler. We're going to talk about everything that you have your hands in right now. You're a busy lady, you're a mom, and you have this vision for pop culture and engaging that space that I think is really unique within the conservative movement. Share a little bit about where that comes from for you.
Right, so I've always been in the creative arts, music, performing, so I've always kept up with Hollywood and celebrities, but I didn't always necessarily align with their values. And so I always felt like sort of the black swan here in the conservative movement, as, most people, they condemn pop culture, we suppress it a lot, because we don't, again, align with a lot of the values and the activism that goes on with celebrities. But I believe that God created the arts to enjoy, to take in the beauty, and I do believe we can separate a little bit of the performers, activism, and the performance and enjoy these things. So I'm trying to offer this niche with a fresh perspective that doesn't suppress pop culture, because it shapes generations, whether we want to acknowledge that or not. And with the party expanding, I mean, we are seeing inclusive. We're seeing a lot of new things happening in a new movement, and I want everybody to read the room with me and join me as we can kind of, take in the celebrity, drama, but also like appreciate the music for what it is. And we don't have to sign on board with everything they believe. We can kind of leave it at that. But also, I love sprinkling in like the first family stories and, what Melania's wearing.
Yes.
And,
oh my gosh.
spottings of Barron Trump. People love that. And so I love to be a voice for that as well.
Yeah.
So
That's huge. Tell me a little bit about your show.
So my show is called A Daily Pop, and it is Monday through Friday. It is the top 5 stories served hot.
Ooh.
Okay, so we've got like 9 to 11-minute episodes. Okay, we can handle
Love it. 5 days a week. That is a lot of work.
Yes, I love it though. I love to just be in the feed every day, So that's Monday through Friday. I'm on Play TV, which is Parler's new app, and I'm growing exponentially there. I love it. Parler's doing a lot of cool things, so I'm working with them to be a brand voice for some of their work. But I've been making such good connections since I'm here, so thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh,
here.
of course. I think we're living at a really interesting moment in history where we've talked about it on Problematic Women before, that so often we see culture really influence politics, but there's a little bit of a reverse trend even, where now we're seeing that political world have a really big influence on culture,
Absolutely.
which, if you ask me, is a good thing. It should go both ways.
They should go hand in hand. And like, I'm doing an interview later with a Grammy-nominated artist that is here, and you're starting to see people in Hollywood that are coming out about their belief. Like, it's not as crazy as it was, 4-6 years ago. So we are seeing a shift, and I think Gen Z and TikTok, we've seen a lot of new voices and influencers coming out. So I don't know, it's kind of the cool kids table. So I'm trying to, bring that fresh perspective and tie in the pop culture. So yeah.
Have conservatives gotten better at engaging on that cultural front? Because for a while it felt like we kind of demonized it. We're like,
oh yeah,
we want nothing to do with that. Let's not touch it.
Yeah.
And then we realized that's actually not an option.
It's not an option.
You have to engage it.
Yes, I think we have. I think for the longest time, my issue was, people that would commentate on pop culture, it sounded like they had never turned on the radio before, And so I'm like, okay, but I think like with Trump, he was a celebrity and a businessman. And so we have seen him totally change the party in that sense. But TikTok, I think, has made a huge impact on how we're kind of like having to engage with pop culture, because you see how the pop culture goes viral. So I think people are getting better at it. But I think I'm here to, be the new wave and fully commit to the bit,
Move us forward. Okay,
Absolutely.
So what is your end goal when you talk about that, of moving us forward, of making sure that conservatives are clued in on pop culture and can engage that space in a way that is, I think, both aesthetically really pleasing, that feels knowledgeable, and it's not just conservatives ranting about the problems in pop culture?
So my goal is to, obviously I'm always into like expanding the party, and I think that like, if you zoom in on what I'm trying to do, I have so many friends that are conservatives, but we listen to alternative media that isn't always conservative. So giving them a space to also take in those conservative bits that I am going to be reporting on, but also just like, this is your girl to go to for all that stuff. So I feel like it's going to expand our party, as I can also reach out to the Gen Zers and some of the new people that have joined our party that aren't the old guys.
Yeah.
So that's my goal, is to just expand our party and be another voice.
Well, tell us how we can follow everything that you're doing, because I know for me, I am often trying to catch up on all of that pop culture stuff, and I'm looking for sources that I can trust in order to do that.
Okay, so I'm everywhere. So my show is a daily show Monday through Friday on Play TV. I'm also on Instagram. I'm also on TikTok. So my show is called A Daily Pop. On Instagram, I'm Adrienne Gray, but I also have A Daily Pop on Instagram. So yeah, I'm everywhere. You got to be everywhere these days.
You do.
But yeah.
Amazing. Well, Nicole, thank you. Thank you for the work that you're doing. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Adrienne Gray.
Yes, thank you.
All right, welcome back, guys. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. Just phenomenal to hear about powerful conservative ladies, what they're doing in various spaces of conservative media and politics and policy, and definitely a topic that we love to discuss here, that pop culture side. And Elise, you always bring that so well.
Sure. I'm really excited to tune into her show and just follow what she's doing.
Yeah, she's
very important.
Oh, yeah. She's a very cool human. Well, thank you all for being with us this week. Annalise, thank you for joining.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast.
Always a joy. Always a joy. Well, we will be right back here with you guys next Thursday. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, leave us a review. We would love to hear it. It's so helpful, especially on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. When you subscribe and leave us a review, that really helps us in the algorithm games. So take a minute if you would and do that. It's very much appreciated. But we'll see you right back here next Thursday.